Hey there, welcome to episode 31 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. Today is it's the morning of June 12, 2024. Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to speak on this, the day after our primary elections here in Nevada. We're going to talk about not politics, this is not political anything, but local government is direct engagement. Well, wherever you found this audio program, hopefully you have the episode description. The show notes are contained within, including a couple of links, only a small number today, and the summary, which I will read to you now. The polls closed at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, that's yesterday, as I record this, for the Nevada primary elections, and within minutes, winners were called. The Nevada Secretary of State website for posting results shows only zeros across the board. I have a link to that. And today is just another day. It came and went. Nothing too exciting. I will remind frequent listener, and anyone new joining in now, quaggling sand. What does that mean? Quaggling sand is the term I came up with when I was about 4 or 5 years old for what you might call, or what you may have heard described as pins and needles, that feeling when circulation returns to one of your limbs after it's been numb for a time. The notion for this audio program is quaggling sand. It is talking about various stories that have some sort of useful element to them. Not saying it's going to be a fable, no Aesop here, but no life lessons for most, but they're interesting to me. Might be handy to know. I talk about education and other life lessons, and who knows. So here we're going to talk about local government is direct engagement. That means in the local government sense, you get to talk directly to your constituents and they get to talk to you. You get to meet them. You could say direct engagement is local government, even. On to the links. The first two, my shameless self-promotion as always, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. You are under no obligation to buy any coffee, although all of my projects are powered by coffee. You can find on the profile page, my profile page, at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, links to my various audio programs. I will stop talking about upcoming changes and I will just merely announce them there when we do some other elements to each of my four audio programs that I produce each week. As with most things, if I say, hey, we're aiming to launch the Quaggling Sand website again, because there used to be one, and then 25 things get in the way of that, now I have a podcast from forever ago that it's coming soon. So I will only talk about it when it happens. And so the website and other things. So there are a variety of other things that will will come to pass, and that's when we'll talk about them. I have a link to that Nevada Secretary of State election reporting website. It's silverstateelection.nv.gov. Obviously, if you're not in Nevada, this won't be as interesting to you. Although, I guess, if you are political, the GOP candidate for Senate, for one of the Senate seats here in Nevada, he may do well. So may play a role in shifting the balance of power way across the country in Washington, D.C. But the notion that government is public is the topic of today, not national politics and hype and vitriol and all that stuff. So we don't have to go there. Also, I have a link about a man named Lawrence Stone. I have a link to a particular story took place in San Jose. Lawrence Stone, I think he still is, but this is in the context of him being, and then finally getting scolded, being the county assessor for Santa Clara County when there was a Great Recession in 2008. I believe I spoke to him in that window of time, and we'll get to that. And he was quick to point out that Santa Clara County, this is where Silicon Valley is, some of it. Santa Clara County, San Jose, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Milpitas. Anyway, so Santa Clara County was one of either the only one or one of two counties that did not see a decline in housing prices, property values. And as the county assessor, that was his thing. So I found him more interesting, though, as the former mayor of Sunnyvale, and we'll get into that. So buy me a coffee, ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, the Nevada State Election.nv.gov website. Let me check that one more time. Yeah, at 9:40 a.m. So the election, the polls closed at 7 p.m. Tuesday. It is 9:40 a.m. Wednesday, and zero data is reported from the Secretary of State for Nevada. Obviously, these primaries are important, although primaries are tricky because they're official, but they're not. Like, there are several roles that were in state, national, local, city council roles, school board, board of regents. So a lot of things were lumped into this, but primaries are not quite the same as like national elections. So I don't know how the Secretary of State feels about this, but their website shows zero updates, 0% for everybody. So you have to look at local media, which already was calling winners and so on. And I'm making that point because local media, just like local government, is direct engagement. So if you want to be considered a viable news source in the mainstream sense, you have to be timely with your reporting. So the Review Journal, for example, which is a statutorily anointed official paper of the city of Las Vegas, and probably of Southern Nevada, really, Review Journal, Las Vegas Sun, they were on the homepage with early calls. AP called the Senate primary so that Brown, I think his name is, who just received an endorsement from Donald Trump when he was here, versus Jackie, what's her name? I should know this. I literally just looked at it too. Yeah, no help there. Anyway, it'll come to me, or I'll look it up. Jackie Rosen. I literally just looked at this like 20 minutes ago. Anyway, so these are interesting. The fact that local media got the numbers out immediately, we're talking like 7:01. The polls are closed for a minute. I was seeing some, I think they called Sam Brown, by the way. I think they called Sam Brown as the primary winner for the GOP for the upcoming Senate race here in Nevada, with 1% of votes in. So interesting. However, yeah, local coverage versus state coverage. So the Secretary of State, they may post numbers eventually, but it's the local engagement, the direct engagement with the local communities, with the local constituencies, that is interesting. And so that's where you see a rush to get those hungry voters fed with poll results and projected winners. So it is definitely election season, though, and it will be all the time forever if the winds continue to blow as they have been. So Nevada, for better or worse, is considered one of those battleground, may or may not be. It's not quite Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or Michigan, but certainly Nevada ranks up there. So the race, and of course, Nevada was a point of contention for some of the election controversies. Well, anyway, I don't want to get into that too much, but it's suffice to say, Nevada is on the radar for the upcoming national election. But again, national election, national politics, national government, it's very big and far away. The state Secretary of State site, like I'm saying here, is they don't have those numbers updated, but local media, local commentary, local discussions at the pub, at the coffee shop, after work, at the water cooler, whatever, will probably be Maybe about the Senate candidates, maybe the Rosen-Brown showdown. I just came up with that, but I'll see if I can trademark that. Maybe that will be interesting, but perhaps production by a street. Perhaps more interesting is who will get on the board of regents. I think they had one seat. Who will be elected to the school board for Clark County School District? Who will be going up to Reno or Carson City, I should say. Sorry, going up to Carson City for state assembly and state senate, since some of those elections took place. And I know in my district where I live, there were some primaries. The candidate, I think it was the incumbent that won in my district for the Republican primary, and we'll see how things unfold. So, yeah, national politics are very dramatic and divisive and chaotic, and they get all the news media, national news, cable news, 24-hour, lots of YouTube commenters, lots of podcasters, and everything is about getting those advertising dollars and news views. I mean, news and advertising, entertainment, all kind of the same. But you really got to get that traffic. You got to get those eyeballs, and so stirring up controversy. And to be honest, you can see it when there were, for better or worse, these court cases for two high-profile people. And as the moment the verdict comes out, then the discussion turns to keep it going to, okay, could they be convicted? I'm sorry, could they be sentenced to jail time, to serve time in an actual jail? And so that becomes the immediate reflexive continuation of the conversation, because you can only speculate now. There will be no news for weeks. So local politics, on the other hand, for example, I know some of the candidates. I have talked to them. In some cases, they don't know me. In other cases, they do know me. So whenever you're doing local politics, you actually have an opportunity to talk to your candidates, talk to the people that work in your local government. You can go visit them. I have been to our City Hall building on multiple occasions. I have sat with city officials and had conversations with them. That is unlikely to happen were I to show up on Capitol Hill alone, without a crowd. But yeah, the chances that I would meet with even the governor of the state, that's not going to happen. But meeting with the mayor here, especially if the new mayor is at all interested in local innovation, much more likely. So the capability of an individual on the ground who lives in a particular community to engage with their local government is far more likely and probably more effective. You can probably have a larger impact depending on how you conduct the conversation and what the goals are. But the chance of having some sort of a positive outcome in a local government engagement situation, to me, in my experience, are far greater. So the more local, the smaller, the closer in, and more likely that and they know. If everybody knows each other, that's an interesting starting point. And elections often come down to an emotional appeal and an emotional decision. And while they may be shaded by specific issues, you may be pro handgun or pro-education or anti-education for whatever reason, or you may want to have more gun rights, or you may, in the local government setting, you may be looking at how here in Southern Nevada, road construction is a big thing. Maybe you have an interest in public works. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing wrong? Why are the streets being torn up? Why is RTC, the Regional Transit Commission, always they have a website dedicated to orange cones being everywhere. And the website is orange because user interface, user experience, norms, and accessibility go out the window. So I think it's called I See Orange or Seeing Orange or something like that. Silly. But you're much more likely to have a local issue that you can actually vote on and see some sort of impact. In a national or a state setting, maybe, but in a national setting, these issues are mostly about getting votes. I always refer to, you don't hear it so often now because there is so much polar interest that makes the news, but a lot of voters are kind of centrist, or much closer to they're more moderate. They're not so extreme. But extremism in pursuit of liberty is no vice, as one might say. No. Extremism gets more clicks, right? The dopamine hit and the adrenaline rush and the anger and emotional response and trolling and name calling and all that. So that's all much more exciting. But most people are kind of moderate or centrist. And I still ponder, this happens a lot. I think Hillary Clinton was the last one where this came up, where they say, oh, the candidate will move to the center to engage more voters. So whatever their positions are, they will talk about them in a more centrist or moderate context to attract more voters. To me, that's disingenuous, but the national political scene, you can actually do that, because who keeps track of everything all day, all night, all the time? Political wonks do. People that are in the press, in the media, commenters, pundits, people who get paid to express opinions, people who are trying to be influential for whatever reason. So the casual person is going to make an emotional decision, like, I like that candidate, or that candidate sounds sincere or seems intelligent. So, but if you look at the actual positions and evolution of their ideas and the way they do their messaging and whatnot, national candidates are kind of a construct, a fictitious character in a movie or a play. So you take from what you will. But in the case of local government and local government agencies and non-government agencies that work with local services and community and so on, the likelihood that you're able to actually engage with them directly and know them, and that they know you, and that they actually kind of get what you're talking about when you say, I think we need this change, I think this street corner needs this to be fixed, right? You're much more likely to get that in the local government setting. And that's why this, as the saying goes, all government is local. So something to think about. Why am I even talking about this? Well, I used to live in Sunnyvale, California, in Silicon Valley. It was a smaller city. At the time, I want to say the population was something like 25, 30,000, maybe. It has grown. So we're talking 2008 timeframe. I think it was something like 30,000. I think it's up over 40 now. That's not important. It's a small city. It's not, San Jose at the time was over 1 million. San Francisco was closer to 800,000, I think, 750, something like that. So Sunnyvale was a very small city. However, aside from San Francisco and San Jose, on the peninsula, so I'm not counting Oakland and Fremont and Newark and all the other cities on the East Bay area, Alameda County, etc. So if you look at the peninsula, at where Silicon Valley was identified, Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Burlingame, Burlingame is where Oracle is, for example. So any two of those cities had smaller populations than Sunnyvale at the time. So I remember that being a fact. So whatever the numbers were, Sunnyvale, for being a small city, was the biggest small city on the peninsula. So I actually ended up, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was able to develop a connection with local government for a few reasons. One, I lived near, like 3 houses away from a city council member. I lived 2 or 3 blocks away from another city council member. I encountered city council members walking around town, just going to downtown Sunnyvale, which I live very near to, or out and about, different places. City Hall was a reasonable walk away, maybe a mile, maybe slightly more. Certainly, definitely a walk. Like there was no need to drive over there. It was that close. But let's call it about a mile, maybe a mile and a quarter. So I could wander over there, which I did for a couple of things. Occasionally, I would attend city council meetings. I could meet with city staffers and so on. So the ability to interact with my local government in the small city was interesting. I participated in a program called the Leadership Sunnyvale. Your city may have a similar program. There is a Leadership Las Vegas program. It is prohibitively expensive. I've not even looked into like scholarships or whatever or sponsored participation, but I did go through the Leadership Sunnyvale program with a sponsorship of some sort. So it ended up being pretty reasonable for the take-home education. All manner of interesting undertakings, twice a month, I think it was, for 8 or 10 months, something like that. There would be a Saturday classroom meeting, and then during the week, we would visit a city facility, whether it was the smart recycling / city dump. That's where I encountered some of the waste management folks, and that'll become important in a moment. Visiting the Department of Public Safety, City of Sunnyvale, California, is the only city of any size and one of only 2 places at all, that may still be correct, that has a unified Department of Public Safety. So police, fire, emergency, medical, what is it? EMT, emergency medical technician, I think it is. So you were triple trained and could perform any of the functions. The take-home joke, of course, this is a good one, actually. If you ask any of the City of Sunnyvale DPS force, which I think was like 220 people at the time, which is not bad considering the size, the geographical size of the city, and the amount of law enforcement and fire safety. The response times were pretty reasonable and so on. So if you ask any of the DPS folks, so what's the difference between being a police and a fire person? And they would always say the same thing. People wave at you with all 5 fingers when you're a firefighter. So there you go. Also, fun fact, fire in Sunnyvale, the fire department, the truck that you are somehow obstructing and so on, if they are able, they can pull you over because they are actually also police officers. They can write you a ticket. Interesting times. So I took the Leadership Sunnyvale program as a student, and then I was on their board of directors, made a lot of connections with a lot of interesting characters. So kind of becoming more of a proactive member of the communities of the city, certainly. Learned a lot about how the city functioned and sometimes didn't, although I have to say they were pretty good. Somewhere around here, we decided, it was a classmate and I of that iteration of the Leadership Sunnyvale program, decided that the lack of local media, that is the only newspaper that was published for Sunnyvale, was published by a company that was publishing small newspapers for different cities that didn't have their own local news. So we only had one reporter, and she did not live in Sunnyvale. So there was no real local media in a city that had no movie theaters, no amphitheaters for public meetings. There were no large public venues. You could obviously meet in a restaurant or a bar or similar, but there were no. I think 2 of the high schools had shut down, so the presence of large meeting spaces was difficult. There was no local media, of course. There was no radio stations or TV stations. No movie theaters. The only movie theater that was there had shut down. It was in the mall, or as we called it, the small, Sunnyvale Small. It was one of those, inside the mall, 4 screens or something, not very big at all. So very little in the way of like accoutrements, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So we said, hey, we should start some sort of something. And we decided to go with podcasting, and we called it Radio Sunnyvale. And that was our foray. We literally launched our programming, and I've done a whole podcast episode about this. We launched our whole programming about having city council debates, one person at a time. And I'm still shocked. Now, we were fair. We were totally fair, and it was totally legitimate. We worked with the Chamber of Commerce as a sort of a co-sponsor or co-enabler, so to lend us a little bit of credibility. We had each candidate in at one at a time, and we talked to them individually. So it wasn't really a debate, but we asked similar questions, and so we got different answers from each person and whatnot. We posted all of the interview episodes at the same time, so there was no lead. There was no there was no partiality. Yeah, it was all impartial in the publication and promotion and so on. So that kind of got us on the map. And then we could show up to city council meetings with a microphone, and that was always fun, and interview people right there in the atrium or after a contentious meeting or whatnot. And as a result of this being present and visible, it was possible to have actual sit-down podcast interviews with the city manager, with the mayor, with city council members, with city staffers in different departments. Of course, there was a person from DPS and a person from city staff somewhere in my class in Leadership Sunnyvale. So I already had a direct connection, plus all the engagement with the Leadership Sunnyvale program, meeting people, for a given day here and there. So lots of people to talk to, lots of people met and so on. One of the people that we met was a former mayor, I think currently still, as of 2 years ago when he got slapped or spanked or admonished or whatever. Former mayor, though, Santa Clara County Assessor, Lawrence Stone. And he was the mayor, I think it was in the 80s. So some time before Silicon Valley really came on the scene. And he had tons of stories. He was all about stories. And it was really interesting because he would pause between stories, almost like he was going through a file cabinetry in his head of which story to pull out. So I was able to, because I had met him and talked to him, and because my local city council member down the street, three doors down, and by the way, the city of Sunnyvale City Council had a lot of real estate agents on it for a long time. And that's pretty typical. People in city government end up being involved in real estate because it's fairly lucrative. Our city council of 7 people, for a window of time, one of the city council members, the one who lived three doors down, I think it was, is a physicist, physics, particle accelerators, and so on. One is a chemist. I think he's now teaching chemistry somewhere, but he was a chemist working industry chemist, not a research chemist at the time. Well, industrial research. And a third person was a production by a street. A third person was a mathematician, and he actually somewhere in there ended up working at Apple on Apple Maps. So he was into geography and geospatial mathematics and so on. So our city council had a physicist, a chemist, and a mathematician on it. And somewhere in there as well, the mayor was a retired fire chief from Palo Alto. So that was an unusual, in the big picture, it was unusual to see a city council in a city like that was actually somewhat representative of the tech-leaning nature of the area. Also, fun fact, Sunnyvale had like 30% of its population, of whatever that number was. You can check. The population numbers are what they are. But 30% of the population in Silicon Valley was receiving some sort of assistance. And we learned this by spending one day with Sunnyvale Community Services, which was an NGO charity that would provide assistance to various people, including a warehouse of groceries that were not the going rate, not the market rate. We learned about below market rate housing. We learned about, which some people will call Section 8. We learned about the two sides of Sunnyvale and where the dividing line was, both financially and socially, and also from a government perspective, because they happened to run the line for districts, right, splitting the north half, which is where I lived, which is where downtown is, and where there was below market rate housing was more prevalent, Section 8 housing, and where there was more crime, but it was also a convenient place to live, near the freeway, near the train station, and so on. So the more upscale side of town was closer to Cupertino. Interesting things you would learn by being involved with your city. These are not things that someone who's not familiar with the area would know. So a national or even a state politician might just say, okay, the whole city, that's all I have to worry about. Not the subtleties and nuances of knowing how things worked. And this would come in handy when I was working with food truck people, which we'll get to in a moment. So I actually had an interview, we met with Lawrence Stone, talked to him. It was more of a casual gathering. Then I said, "Hey, I was at Radio Sunnyvale. Would you mind doing an interview with me?" And he said, "No, come on down." So I went down to the county assessor's office in Santa Clara County, wherever it was in San Jose. Went up to his office. I set up my little Zoom field recorder with the 2 microphones, and we had a chair and a table, 2 chairs and a table. So he joined me at the table, so he didn't stay behind his desk or anything. A man of the people. And there was no preparation ahead of time. He just said, "Yeah, go ahead, shoot." And we talked about the financial crisis and living in Santa Clara County and what does an assessor do. But we also talked a lot about Sunnyvale, him being the former mayor. And he had a great story, which I can't remember, I think he told it during the casual gathering. But he was always had stories queued up. So he was ready with the answers to everything. Consummate politician. I do know that when we were in his office, he said something he would never understand is why people would ever consider voting for someone who runs on the fact that they are an outsider, that they're not a politician, that they're a person of the people. They're just like you and me. They're not professional politicians. He said politics is a rough game. And I can't imagine trying to get any position. City council is a good place to start. That's where he started. He said, I can't imagine, though, hiring for any sort of state or federal, national government roles, thinking it's a good thing that they have no experience. And he made a better case for that. He said, it's crazy. It's you need to have professional people who understand how things work in order to make things work. But the real take-home story, and the one that is the focus of today's episode, which is why I've been talking about all this, when he was the mayor, the waste management company that had the sanitation contract for the city and would deliver waste collected with their trucks and with dumpster collection vehicles and so on. And they would bring it to the Smart Recycling Center, City Dump. City Dump, by the way, covered with grass to contain the reactions going on. If you ever wonder why a trash dump, city dump, why they stink so much, is because not only the stuff that people dump in there, but there's also chemical reactions going on. All the weight creates pressure and temperature conditions that lead to chemical reactions occurring. You'll get methane gas produced and so on. So you can cover dumping areas with grass, and the grass will help contain some of the odor, but the methane gas can still come up through the grass. And what happens if you try to mow that grass is you will start that grass on fire because you're operating vehicles with metal striking metal, sparking, or possibly sparks from exhaust, or whatever your mowing vehicle might do in these circumstances. So you're basically cutting through a pool. Now, luckily, methane is not heavy, so it does disperse into the atmosphere. But if you have methane coming up out of the ground, it is what it is, and it could ignite. So at the Smart Recycle Center, with the grass-covered dumping areas, there were goats running around because goats eat the grass and hardly ever start fires. So that was kind of cool. So the waste management company that would collect and deliver the city's refuse on a daily basis, their contract was up for renewal, and the city council for Sunnyvale was going to put that out for a bid, and they were coming up with the terms and their numbers and all that. So working the process. So as Mayor Stone at the time recalls, he was the mayor at the time, as Assessor Stone recalled of that time, he said, I went out one morning to retrieve my trash receptacle, and Sunnyvale had the large plastic receptacles with the handle and the wheels, the big giant floppy cover, so they could be easily automated with the robot arm to dump into the sanitation vehicle. So all good. He said, I found a note taped to my trash can, to the handle. And he said he looked up and down the street and he saw the same note taped on everybody's trash receptacles. So he brought the note into his house and he told his wife, "We can't compete with this." What was on the note? Well, the note was a reminder to each and every customer of the waste management company. I think it really was like WM something. And I think that's a national company. So waste management company. I actually interviewed the owner of that company. I believe he was Lebanese, family business. So all of his family was around in the office and whatnot. Nice guy. He made a point of talking about his ethnic background. So that's why I bring it up. Anyway, and family. Family was very important to him. What they had done was they said to every single customer in Sunnyvale, "Hey, our contract is coming up for renewal. We want to remind you of the services we provide," and so on. So here's the deal. If a city wants to engage its population that way, they need to pay. They need to send out mailers. They need to engage the public in some way. And this happens at any time there is anything, any sort of public comment period. You can post things officially with regard to like city council meetings. You can put things in the minutes, but nobody reads those. So you really have to do direct engagement. That's well, the city council was what, 7? I think it was 7 people. City staff, okay, but that's not their job. Their job is not to go out canvassing neighborhoods and talking to people. So you can engage people at farmers markets, at other gatherings. Every single time you put your trash can out, you could get direct engagement from the people that are taking your trash away. They're providing you a service, an essential service, at least weekly, and they had direct connection with you. They were paid to do it. They were being paid, according to the contract, to engage their customers, to leave with them the sentiment that, boy, I hope our contract gets renewed. You should talk to your city council representative. So there was no way to counter that. There was no competition. There was no way they could have the budget to get that level of engagement. So he said, yeah, there's really very little we can do to come up with a competing, a real competition for a contract renewal. So there you go. Direct engagement for the win. Stone also recalled with Sunnyvale being such a pivotal place between San Jose and San Francisco, and the tech scene was becoming apparent. It was not quite there yet. Certainly there were there were well-known companies all over the area, but it wasn't until the early 90s when the internet came along and the world said, "Oh, what's going on over there in Silicon Valley?" But it was certainly in the middle of what would be an interesting place. And so he was quite proud of the fact that Sunnyvale would be, it still is at the tip of the bay, south tip of the bay, kind of on the way, not really on the way, but kind of between San Jose and Oakland also, if you shot over to Milpitas and headed up on the 280. So in an interesting spot, kind of in the middle of everything, not worthy of being called the heart of Silicon Valley, but certainly somewhere in the butt area. So organizing and operating the city efficiently and effectively was their main goal. It was not going to be a sexy city, but it was going to be a good, well-run city, and he felt they accomplished that. Fun fact as well, these eventually got taken down, but there were radar antennas. There were dish antennas. Basically, Moffett Field in Mountain View was right there, and so the dishes were technically, they may have been in Sunnyvale, but they may have been, I can't remember exactly, because there was Moffett Field, and then there was the NSA, the Blue Cube, allegedly, some government stuff going on there. The building that I was working in for Supermac was a former sensitive communications building, so the walls were like 25 feet of concrete, no reception of any kind, radio, pagers. Remember pagers? If you were wealthy enough to have a cell phone, it didn't work in some parts of the building because the walls were just immense. So all of that made Sunnyvale like one of the top 10 targets during the Cold War. So fun fact. So what did I learn from this? Well, if you want to do something and you need the support. You need some support of people in an area, right? Like, I need all the people in this neighborhood. I need all the people in this county. You really need to engage all of them in some way. You can pretend that posting Instagram ads that get seen by some people sometimes is enough. And I see a lot of food trucks. And by the way, we'll be talking about food trucks briefly, so stand by. A lot of food truck event organizers throw up some images on Instagram and they figure that's enough. But here's the thing. If a food truck owner has developed a following and the food truck owner is going to an event, they will tell their followers through their social media connections, and those people are more likely to come to an event because their favorite food truck is there than they are to go to that event because the event advertised. So, and often the food trucks pay for the privilege. So your marketing people are paying you to market your event. Brilliant. The waste management company won their renewal with terms they wanted because they had full support of their customers, the residents of the city. They earn the support not only by doing the job, but by engaging them directly and repeatedly. They have access to their customers every week, or sometimes more, but at least once a week, just like postal workers. They have access. The federal government has an agency that engages most of their citizens directly, or could, on a daily basis. And for some reason, they're not 100% supportive of that. Crazy. So yeah, direct engagement has a lot of value. When we were running the Owners Association for Food Trucks, the Bay Area Mobile Food Vendors Association, the city of Sunnyvale was conducting a community survey to help change zoning rules for a food truck operation. So that was a good thing for the food truck owners. And remember, for the city to engage all of its residents to get them to participate in something like this, very expensive. So they tend to put the word out, and then it has to kind of organically travel around. They can mention it at city council meetings, and it'll be in the minutes. Maybe that one reporter for the local newspaper will show up and write an article about it. Maybe. The internet was still in its early days, so there was some internet outreach, but really it was about direct engagement. So, because it was favorable to operating food trucks in the city of Sunnyvale, and I should point out that the person in the planning office that was running this was a huge food truck fan, and she literally went to visit food trucks and collected data about traffic impact and all sorts of factors, and came up with a fair proposal eventually for some zoning changes. So she was pro food truck too, so that didn't hurt. But she was also very fair. So she was a fan, but fair in her assessment. So it was very transparent, so very good. She even sent me her findings so that the Food Truck Association members could have some idea of where they were headed, which was good. But that's later. They wanted to do this community outreach. So what did we do? We took a page from the Book of Stone, actually from our waste management company. We placed flyers on every food truck, whether they were based in Sunnyvale or not. If they were doing business in Sunnyvale, their fans, the people that would actually, and they didn't have to be like regular fans, but every office park they went to, every food truck event, everything, everywhere they were, lunch and dinner, sometimes breakfast, in the Sunnyvale area, they had a flyer in the customer window, so the customer would see it when they're paying their ticket, with a QR code and please participate in this community survey and so on. Turns out the city survey had the second highest participation rate on the books in history, according to all of their previous community outreach surveys. The number one was a cannabis survey, and it was actually a negative survey. That is to say, people were against whatever they were doing, and I don't remember the nature of it, but it may have been some early cannabis dispensary deliberations. So very, very anti. So that was number one. Strange, but food trucks and zoning, changing the rules in Sunnyvale, was number two. So that was, as I was told, a direct result of this positive, proactive outreach. And you're reaching out to you're doing some inbound marketing. You are reaching out to people who already like food trucks. So they're going to come and find the food trucks when they're there, when they're around. They're going to go, hey, my favorite food truck is down the street. I'm going to go to that food truck. I'm in Mountain View. My favorite food truck is half a mile away in Sunnyvale, so I'll go there. Not everyone could participate if they were not a resident of Sunnyvale, but they could tell their friends. They could mention it. They could, so the word spread directly from people seeing the flyer and getting the QR code, or by word of mouth. So that worked. The take home, if you want to if you want to make a change or do something unusual or do something novel or get a job in an elected role or convince people that you should be doing something or be elevated to some role or position somewhere, you really should consider the way you're going to engage them directly so that everybody knows you and what you're up to, or why should I participate in a community survey? Oh, it affects this thing that I like, that I'm visiting a couple times a week, and then I'm giving them my money. They want to make it easier for me to visit more of these more often in more places. I can fill out a survey for that. So you make it appealing, and you can do that by, for example, being supportive of your local businesses and services and so on that do engage people, so they can be sort of a proxy. Participation in the community survey was the second, like I said, because direct engagement from the people that the community, the members of the community, loved and wanted to support. So can you take advantage, if you will? Can you leverage? Can you make use of that support if there is a sincere level of support by the food truck owners in something other than a survey like this? My theory is yes. So the caveat to local engagement. If communities are heavily siloed, it is entirely possible that someone who does a lot of good in one locality, so the Bay Area was sort of like, not directly, not really very close. And I don't want to say next Silicon Valley. That's not what I'm saying. But the fact that the Bay Area had so many cities, had 5 counties, and if you count Santa Cruz, it was 6. So a food truck owner who wanted to conduct business in all these counties needed to get approved by the health department in each county, and event permits and arguably business licenses and so on. So it was a lot of work getting around to all these different localities. Luckily, Silicon Valley was not necessarily so siloed because people tended to go from where they lived to where they worked. They passed through several towns, different counties. There was always events going on, and people would visit, travel. So moving around the Bay for fun, for money, for work, for other purposes was commonplace. But the ability to connect with people on a regular basis could be tricky. So if something's going on in San Jose, somebody in Oakland may not be paying attention to it. They may only hear about it indirectly through a coworker, or maybe they happen to be visiting San Jose for something. So it was a little bit difficult to communicate those super local, hyper local issues, even though Silicon Valley was not, strictly speaking, a siloed region, especially when compared to the Vegas area, which is much smaller with fewer people, yet is profoundly siloed. And by this, I mean, for example, where I live in the northern part of Las Vegas, not North Las Vegas, that's a different city. I live in the, it's called Centennial Hills area. So I live on the way to Tonopah, if you will, in the city of Las Vegas proper, but not close to downtown, not close to the middle of the area. So there are a lot of people who live in this area who do not travel to downtown for social engagements, for concerts, for fireworks, and so on. So they don't really connect with the goings on downtown. Unfortunately, a lot of the quote unquote innovation effort, the notion of being an innovation hub, the innovation district proper is basically in downtown Las Vegas. It's downtown, Fremont Street area, Arts District, legal district where the courthouses are and whatnot. The boundaries are sort of vague, but it's a fairly large area, but it is definitely downtown. So if you are not downtown, you may not be keeping track of the innovation district because we're a heavily siloed area with many localities that pretty much keep to themselves, or which pride themselves on being separate places. Some of this may have to do with crime. Crime rates vary, and they're highly regional. West Las Vegas, the historic West Side, is allegedly among the highest crime rate areas in Southern Nevada. and it ranks in the national. It's like hundreds of percent higher with violent crimes or so on. So it's, not everybody wants to say they're part of that, so fine. So you end up with these silos where people keep to themselves, and this has been observed and commented upon, and even it's demonstrable. So if you are well known for performing some duty, for enabling some sort of event or benefit, it helps people, but it's in a different part of the Southern Nevada area. And if you are running for political office and you live, for example, up where I live, nobody here will have any direct connection to what you're doing. They may not even know who you are. So you may be a pillar of the community, but just not in your community. And so the problem is, even the best, most qualified, or most appealing, and some people are not all three of those, rarely, in fact, are not really engaging people near them, because that's not where they shine, is where they live. But if you are running for political office, or if you need to have support of the people in your locality, whether it's a district or a ward or a particular agency that only operates in a certain area, if you are not known for what you are known for in a different ward, and there are actual examples of this, and there are actual examples from the primary election that just finished yesterday, where I can point to and say, that person is very well known in the wrong place. And so they got a very, very poor turnout, as far as I knew last night. Maybe I should check that real quick. I just took a little break there. The person I'm speaking of, I'm not going to name the person, but they did not win their primary. Victory by, they got 25% of the votes of the person that did win. The problem is, yes, this person is highly accomplished and well regarded by some. I personally would not have thought of it as a good idea for him to be in a political office running things, not a politician by any means. Go back to what Lawrence Stone said, probably would have been useless in a government setting, just because government is not for everyone. I've heard this many times, but it's not for everyone. But this person is not well known, because a lot of the things that he is known for are not in this district. So just a nice guy running for office, but we'll stick with the other guy. So interesting outcomes, because doing good things that nobody knows about, and this is why social media has become the end-all and be-all, a lack of familiarity can sort of be overcome with a strong media presence. If you are always tweeting, or now it's always Instagramming, if you're always on Instagram, and that's why local media, city agencies, city services, even law enforcement, they basically make announcements on Instagram. And because of the algorithm, you don't know that you're going to see these announcements. So they're basically shotgunning. They're basically trying to just fire everything at everywhere and just hope they hit something, so that someone will find the message, the information somewhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Twitter, TikTok, WhatsApp, Snap, who knows? You can spread your message across all of the platforms, and then you still got to do YouTube and YouTube Shorts and Twitch. Yeah, who knows? You can always just keep going. So if people don't know to look, they have to be told, or they have to be shown, look, this person's been doing all this good stuff. But only political wonks, I think I said this already, political wonks, people that are pundits and in the media and in the election business, they pay attention to all this stuff. The casual person is only going to another candidate advertisement on Instagram. Who cares? I'm going to scroll right by that. They may be familiar with a candidate, so they know that one, and that's all they got to know. They don't have to do research or listen to advertising or watch debates. So in the local context, it's particularly tricky, because a lot of people will know the person running personally, especially if they have a history, if they've been in government for a while, or at a government agency, or they're well known. They may be up for an appointment or they do have to be voted in. But either way, community support is based more on familiarity and that emotional connection because you know the person and you know that they've done good things. If that person hangs around in a different part of town doing good things there, it may not benefit them in their locality. By the way, I did choose the link to Lawrence Stone. He got in trouble for doing a mass mailing. I find that kind of ironic. He's been in politics long enough. I'm sure all of his friends were like, don't do that again. Let's put this matter behind us. But yeah, he's a professional politician, and that was apparent and evident every step of the way. And by the way, in some cases there may be actual resentment. This is another thing to think about in how you spin this, how you play this. If you're doing all your stuff downtown, if you make the Arts District your favorite place, but you're in a district up north and you are running for office to represent your district, there may be people who say, yeah, but you don't even do the good stuff that you're doing here. You do it somewhere else. So why are you running for political office? You're running for an agenda that you've been developing in a different part of the city or a different part of the region. So there could be actual resentment, and opponents can run on that, right? They can say, look at that empty chair. They're off in another district. So it is the direct engagement that can be critical. And again, I heard this, I've seen it happen in local politics and in local government operation. We learned about it in Leadership Sunnyvale. We learned about it with Radio Sunnyvale, with talking to people in government, talking to small businesses, just being around town and being visible and being recognized. People wanted to talk to us. I sat in a coffee shop art gallery on El Camino and Matilda intersection with a person on city council in Sunnyvale who was about to become the next mayor. We had our interview, and I had people call in. This was before live streaming of podcasts was so, easy. So I had people call in and leave voicemails with questions. So I played the questions during, and I put them in I edited them in later. So, it was pieced together, but this was a city that was super innovative. It was very, very supportive of local innovation. So when I said, hey, would you put up with this sort of jury-rigged pot? She said, yeah, sure. Let's do it. So she was very familiar that we had the first local coverage of our city council election a year before, or 2 years before, or whatever it was. So yeah, an entirely supportive locality. Why? Because we were locals in the city of Las Vegas. We were in the city of Sunnyvale doing things for the benefit of the city of Sunnyvale and the people who live there. So it was a pretty easy sell to say, would you like to be involved in the same things that we're involved in? Yeah, I can't even remember a time when somebody said no. If anything, it was not today. How about tomorrow or next week? So entirely supportive of public engagement when you are in a small setting like that. Now, City of Las Vegas itself is 577,000 is a census number that comes to mind. Wherever you live, it might be very different. So, easily 10 times plus, 12 times bigger than little old Sunnyvale. But the fact is, you can actually engage people. You can engage city council. You can engage different staffers. I've had interactions with many staffers in the city of Las Vegas and other areas around. Henderson, Bullhead City is further away. Boulder City, city of North Las Vegas, and then unincorporated Clark County. So you would work with county commission type people and staff. These are still people that are reachable. You can talk to them on the phone. You can have meetings with them. They will sometimes give you the time of day, but it is a lot easier if you want to participate in government, either as a normal citizen, resident in a particular area, or if you want to actually run for office or be involved in a staff role or supporting non-government agency, non-government organization role. Knowing the people, engaging with them, talking to them makes a world of difference. So my take home, the lessons learned over the many years, if there is that desire to tackle a role based on some kind of celebrity, and winning an election is about being a celebrity. You got to be well known and well liked, or at least one of those. Maybe respected would be nice also. It is important to make proactive engagement in the geographic local areas of concern. So wherever you're running, I don't like to use the word target, but I think I will. But wherever you are, whatever district or ward or region, wherever you're trying to become well known, so that you will be elected, you will garner some votes. That concern of direct engagement should be a priority. If I focus my efforts in another city or region, I must connect those efforts elsewhere, those efforts that are not where I'm running, to the people, that is the voters, for example, in my target geography. So if I'm running in my district, but I do everything in California, that is not going to help me unless I demonstrate a connection between what I'm doing over there and how that will benefit over here, the people that are here, or that I'm at least thinking about the people here. Otherwise, why am I running? Why am I running here? Why am I trying to enact any sort of change here? And I will say a corollary to this, because I'm going to end on the food truck type thing note, but that similar, food trucks and similar. When I was in the Bay Area, a place known for a culture of innovation, and I said, hey, mobile vendors, you need to operate with one voice that isn't an event organizer, because they have a profit motive. You should have an individual business motive. I mean, profits for yourselves, obviously, but changing the rules, like unified health department checks, rather than having to get 5 or 6 inspections. How about one that covers all the counties? I think that's still not enabled this many years later. But if you work together, you can still compete against each other, but you're already coopetition. I don't know what the other forms of that word are. Was very strong in the Bay Area mobile vending community, if I can use that word I don't like. The food truck people, the food truck owners, absolutely promoted each other on Twitter. They cross-promoted events. They cross-promoted events that they were not even at. Basically, they understood that if you elevate the entire market, the people that don't go to your food truck today but go to your quote-unquote competitor at a different event today, well, they couldn't come to see you anyway. So they didn't really not choose you. They just chose an event that was closer. They chose to go to something that they were more interested in. If they have a good experience with mobile vending, they'll run into you eventually. That's another potential customer you might get. So they kind of grasped that. So when I came along and said, hey, I have these ideas, they were willing to listen. At no time did I hear anyone complain that I didn't own a food truck. Here in Las Vegas, like 30% of the potential membership of our Nevada Mobile Vendors Association, that was their first response. You don't even own a food truck. What could you possibly know about any of this? And so I had to share my experiences, which were mostly from California. So some people took that as valid. Other people said, yeah, but this is not that. So it can be a real challenge. You need to connect those efforts. And if it doesn't connect, then it ends up being either moot or can be a detractor, that you're more focused there than here, for example. So connection with and support from the usual and unusual suspects is essential. Local press, of course, local government, if you can already be familiar with local government people, if they already know you, if you make appearances at events that are oriented towards either specifically towards government or towards efforts or actions or agencies or whatever it is you want to be involved with, if you already are involved with that as a normal person, as a resident, as an interested party, a friend of the organization, that will certainly help. Local government agencies are all reaching the target constituency. All these organizations are in some way, if you are aiming correctly, are in some way engaging with the people with whom you need to develop this relationship. And so those food trucks, people in the service industry and or hospitality, and of course, local focused social media influencers. These are all people who talk directly to or engage directly with people who like them. They don't, however they've accomplished it, they developed a following. I know for a fact that people will travel to visit their favorite food truck. I know for a fact people will travel to visit their favorite bartender, barista, or whomever when they're working. You want to go to where people know your name. That's a pretty natural thing. So if your friend is working, if you are a regular somewhere, you're going to go to your favorite place, even if it's 2 towns over, if it's an hour drive through our always present traffic, etc. So if you can align yourself, if you can either paid advertising or develop support from groups like mobile vendors, farmers markets, the restaurant business, culinary in general, is super powerful in the Southern Nevada area. So culinary union, food service, hospitality, service industry in general. If you can align with those, if they match your values. So I happen to be a fan of small business and individual worker. So unions can be good, can be bad, but if you can actually come up with a way to build a relationship with people who then already have relationships with a supportive public fan base. Internet influencers are a newer, more modern form of that, but if you can get the YouTubers and the Instagrammers to mention you, and by the way, this is a little fun fact for food trucks, you basically target foodie influencers who happen to be nearby if you can. So if they are geographically near your food truck event or your food truck presence, you basically send them a note and say, hey, free food if you come by in the next 30 minutes. They'll come by, you can give them free food, they'll take pictures, they'll mention your event, all their people that follow them, and if any are nearby, they'll come by. So you basically do the same thing. You basically appeal to people who have already established a fan base, and this is not new, this is not particularly insightful, except for this. What I found in the downtown Vegas area, for example, was they only view food trucks as competition if you're in the restaurant business, so they don't like them being there. What they don't realize is that people from other places who don't go downtown will go downtown to see their favorite food trucks because they know the food truck is open tonight and it's downtown. They'll go, if they want, to that food truck. That customer is not going to come to your restaurant. They're going to come for that food truck. So if you can develop a relationship with the people who are willing to travel to visit the businesses, the individuals, the mobile businesses, the brick and mortar businesses, they're willing to go to visit one, maybe they'll be willing to visit the other. So my argument at the time was, hey, if you allow the food truck crowd to visit your bar with their food truck food, no, we have a restaurant, they're competing against it. Yeah, but you don't have to sell them low margin food because restaurant business is very low margin, fun fact. But you can have them come in and purchase your high margin alcoholic beverages. And you'll also be developing goodwill with people who might come back tomorrow when there's no food trucks and maybe they'll eat your restaurant. Nope. Don't want to even go there. Not even a possibility. We want the food trucks to go away. So if you don't understand the value proposition of local activation and social activation, I should say, social activation and portable variety, if it doesn't lead to people being interested in taking action to enjoy the things they enjoy wherever they are, make that connection so that they can actually understand the things that you're doing in some other place could have a positive reflection on them, and certainly the character that is involved with these positive activities and outcomes should represent them in their neighborhood. What might come of that? But when those things are left to chance, when they're left separated, you end up with familiar names, familiar candidates, people who already are incumbents, right? Incumbents are easy. You don't have to think. You don't have to track politics. But if you can receive that message when you are enjoying nights and not being hit over the head with it, but if every time you go to a food truck, if the candidate that supports food trucks is mentioned, hey, we're having a food truck event for a rally. By the way, when Donald Trump was here, he had a rally at Sunset Park, which is in the south part of the Las Vegas area. It's not in Las Vegas City, but it's down south of the city. Guess what? Food trucks. And he talked about not taxing tips. So he's appealing to the service industry and the mobile vendor industry. And so you had people literally going to Sunset Park to see, go visit their favorite food trucks and attend the rally. And they heard these messages. And if you're in the service industry, which is very powerful in Las Vegas, you heard a very interesting message. And this is by someone who only knows, well, okay, there is Trump Tower here. He only knows that the service industry, the culinary union, etc., is very strong here. So he's going to make that appeal in a state that already doesn't have income tax. So kind of interesting. The tipping thing might be interesting in other states like California. But I'm not exactly sure how tipping is reported in Nevada. But we don't pay income tax. We leave that to our visitors and tourists, gamblers. Anyway, the take home is direct engagement, talking directly to people. The reason I'm doing the 4 different audio programs per week, aside from it's just a nice way to practice talking, because otherwise I work from home all the time and I don't talk to people frequently. Having guests would be nice, but there is always a collection of audio receipts, and maybe there will be some video receipts soon. So I can always point to, or someone can stumble upon, like, hey, what does Dan think of this or that? And I've probably done an episode on it or talked about some aspect of it. So my messaging is always available, and I can always point to those in other contexts in my travels. So whatever I'm trying to accomplish. If you have not already heard in my various mentions across these platforms, my near-term startup project revolves around new ways of sharing information across localities. So local news, local press, sort of falling by the wayside, not necessarily winning when it comes to profitability. There's also the gatekeeper problem. If you can't get mentioned in the local media, then how do you get found? How do you get discovered? If you're working on a new startup project and nobody cares, then it's really hard to get some traction, get some attention. So that's actually another thing we're going to engage. This is after it'll be 11 years in August that I've been here in the Vegas area. So a lot of observation, but that direct engagement take home is something that I'm glad I was there for. It seems obvious, but in the context in which he mentioned it, and then the very soon after direct application and directly measurable positive results, positive outcome, directly connected to that direct engagement and understanding the fan component, that people do take an interest in their favorite things and where they are at any given time. My favorite food truck is in Sunnyvale. Let's go to Sunnyvale. Hey, look, they're advertising for this community survey thing. And by the way, Mountain View did something similar soon after. So the rules were changed in Mountain View, California as well. And I will also mention that I did visit both city council meetings during this time to make lobbying statements on behalf of our 501c6 Owners Association. So all of these things connect, and very educational times. And so, one of the things I think the greater Vegas area is missing in a profound way is discovery mechanisms, so that we know who, what, when, where, why, not in a pyramid style print media formatted legacy and newspaper article in digital form, but using modern methods and tools and techniques and user interface elements, and yet accessibility and internationalization and localization to make information available in useful ways to a place that not only has 2.3 million local residents, give or take, census data, but also allegedly sees about 40 million visitors per year at the current run rate, based on data published by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, which I may or may not trust completely, but the bottom line is we have lots of people coming here. It should be easier to find information in the language you speak, not necessarily the language the census says you should speak. English, Spanish. Tagalog, number 3, by the way. Tourism, though, brings all people from all places. I know myself, I've tried to help people navigate the buses here in German, Polish, Japanese, and this is just in the last year. There was somebody else. I can't remember. A lot of pointing at maps and so on. But these are problems that have been solved. We can make use of existing technologies and methodologies if we can get people to understand them, and you do that with direct engagement. So they don't have to become experts. They just have to be willing to pay attention for short periods of time and pay attention to people and businesses that they love and enjoy. I know it's not that simple, but I'm keeping this one short. Thank you as always for listening. Don't forget buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo, coffee.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo. Believe it or not, my voice is actually slightly better, or it was before I began recording. I need to do some operatic warm-up prior. And on that note, thank you for listening as always, and go visit a food truck. You did your voting. Next up, November 5th, sometime in November, you'll hear about it. Bye.